Here we go again, guys. So this is the last lecture on topic e4, e5 and how to break Philidor's defense. So today's lecture will be about Philidor's exchange, and it happens after e4, e5, knight f3, d6, and d4. For the first time, I just have to warn you that this is going to be a little bit more advanced lecture, because they're not going to be like such a crazy number of games and with all those like mating combinations and really defining and easily winning variations. But in most of these positions, I'm just going to help you choosing very interesting and popular lines. After e takes d4, of course, knight takes d4. There is also a variation where the queen can capture on d4, but it's completely different type of position, although even in that position, white should be a bit better. After knight f6, you of course develop your knight and defend pawn on e4, bishop e7, preparing themselves for castle, rook e8, bishop f8 with potential pressure on e4 pawn. And here, amongst many possibilities, for example, Magnus Carlsen uses g3, Capablanca, Lekain and others in the past used bishop e2 or bishop c4. There are like so many other possibilities. I very much enjoy the bishop f4. And nothing about this lesson would be so special unless I decide to come up with the next move. So here I used to teach my lower 80 students to play queen d2, followed by long castle, f3, and then you just push your pawns on the king side. And just like I said, that just looks normal, looks like English attack against Sicilians, and plans for white are very easy. Although there are certain type of variations by black where you can confront some problems with your king on the queen side. And just because of this, I've been searching a lot for good and reliable move in terms of theory and found it. It's bishop e2. It's very difficult, especially to like weaker players, to explain this move. First of all, I have to say that it's Nigel Short's specialty, with which he defeated Grandmaster Morozovic back to 2005. This move has become very popular recently, since some best engines started to point it out as the top computer move. Well, it has many subtle ideas behind, and let me get to the point. It still doesn't show white's intentions, whether white wants to play short or long castle. That's a good point behind bishop e2. Sometimes it may go to f3, to defend pawn on e4 and maybe break along the diagonal h1, a8. Also, it surely gives g4 in most of the lines, which is going to be one of your crucial ideas here. And in many occasions, it gives black hard time to evaluate plans with early c6 due to d6 weakness. Finally, all things considered, this modern move, bishop e2, delays white's decision about castle and makes black's game considerably more difficult. Let's go. The most typical move is rook e8, and this is gonna be an interesting part about my game that I played and how I actually beat up GM, an anonymous GM on ICC. But apart from rook e8, there is a classic move like c6. Idea behind c6 could be double, to push d5, or in most of these cases to play like b5 and to launch the queenside action. And here you just go with this interesting plan. So just like I told you in this lecture, I'm not going to show you like so many beautiful mating combinations, tactical things, and so what I need to show you here is just how to place and develop your pieces and how to get the advantage. So it's more appropriate to say like getting like good advantage against this opening. By the way, which is considered to be very common on all kinds of levels by black players. So after knight a6, to go with this knight on c5 to pressure this pawn on e4, queen goes to g3. Beautiful place for this queen, as it supports the idea of bishop h6. For the first time now you can see the point of this bishop on e2, since the knight h5 is not going to be possible. And also you want to make long castle and threaten and exert pressure on the d6 pawn. After knight c5, bishop h6, you threaten checkmate. Knight e8, and now h4. I very much like move h4. You just want to push your pawn up to h6. You, of course, if they move the king, which basically happened in the game of these two guys, he now put his bishop back to g5, and of course he would be happy to exchange these bishops and to recapture by pawn and open h file. After knight f6, bishop f3. This is what I spoke about. In some of these positions, this bishop goes on f3, defends pawn e4, and also stops knight h5. Very nice idea. After queen a5, Indian Grandmaster Ganguly played long castle and afterwards managed to win the game. This happened back to 2013 in Dubai, and this is like a very, very nice example of an active game, pretty nice and easy plan for white, and a very prosperity type of game for white. Instead of c6, they can go a6. I found like a whole bunch of games with this move a6. Well, one might say the point could be b5. No, the point is c5, because you just want to prevent knight b5, in which case the d6 pawn would be weak. So after a6, queen d2. Once again, white puts like a pretty big pressure on the black's position, and black doesn't know whether he wants to make long or short castle. So after c5, knight goes back to b3, b5. And just when black finally hopes to be able to create some sort of queenside action, if white makes any long castles, now you see one more point behind this seventh move by white, bishop a2. So it's rook to d1. Rook to d1 goes after the pawn d6, and all of a sudden we see like real weakness of this pawn. The rest of the game is not even, and the, like a possibility what might happen over the board is not even important, because obviously d6 is gonna fall, while your king should be absolutely safe on the king side, because you'll make castle there. So after, in one game was bishop e7, this guy captured, and after knight e4, captured everything, played f3, took on c5, and we just have to say that game he played king d2, but king f2 was absolutely to the point. Inability to complete his development on the queen side. Threat of rook c1, pretty safe king on f2. Inability to capture on c5 because of mate on the back rank gave white much better position. And there is a third possibility, knight c6. I'll show you a game between Grandmaster playing white, Alberto David from Italy, and another guy who was around FM strength. And the guy played knight c6. On this knight c6 move, you definitely have to play queen d2 to complete your development with a long castle. Generally speaking, when they play knight c6, you can always make long castle and get a good game. After knight e4, what can we do? We've just lost that tempi. Queen takes d4, bishop e6, long castles, and now they go a6. This is a great introduction into black's plan. Black just wants to play b5, c5, b4 afterwards. That bishop on e6 has some potential against the a2 pawn. After c5, queen a5 might happen. But look how white easily gets the advantage, similar to the game of Ganguly that I previously showed you. Queen e3, I like this one. Opens up the rook on d1, threatens e5, and this queen might go to g3 if possible. I'm just saying that's one of a possibility, because knight on h5 never works because of a great bishop on e2. So after knight e7, they just stop the c5 or make it kind of useless. g4. This is another point, great point behind bishop e2. You always can push your pawn up to g4. And that's what Grandmaster David Alberto did here. So after b5, h4. By the way, they learned this trick because all you want to do in similar type of positions, and this is position with these opposite side castles, is to go with the attack. So you want to push your pawns g5, h5, and to break with g6. This guy played b4, played knight e5, and captured by rook, which is very important because he doesn't give this guy a possibility to play rook e8, bishop f8 or f6 with a great opportunity to take control of e5 square. He takes by rook and keeps the e-file closed. So after rook e8, g5, c6, rook goes back, queen a5. Whenever you have long castle, put a king on b1. I keep repeating that. Knight c5, f3, d5, and h5. And I guess you're going to be pretty much sick of my explanation here. And I would say and repeat for like billionth time in these lectures, with the bishop pair and of course possibility to play g6 next, white was so much better. And of course he managed to win this game fairly easy. And finally, if they play knight bd7, it just closes the lights for bishop for a moment. Most likely this knight goes towards c5. So after queen d2, knight c5, you don't have to bother, play f3. And these knights on, not a knight on f6, but especially knight on c5, those are unhappily placed knights. So after long castles, white just wants to go g4, h4, and to push these pawns, while the king, as usual, should end up being on b1. And it's time to once again remind you on the order of moves. So after e4, e5, knight f3, d6, d4, e takes, Philidor exchange. There are some players call it open Philidor. Knight e4, knight f6, knight c3, bishop e7, bishop f4. Like a good introduction into the queen d2 long castle, but no. Now you make the short specialty and you make that bishop e2 move. After rook e8, what's so special about this last possibility by black, rook e8? It's so typical. It's a typical plan by black in Philidor exchange because black wants to retreat his bishop to f8 and make pressure against e4 pawn, and it gives quite a solid position to black with a pretty easy plans for black afterwards. So after queen d2, bishop f8. Don't forget, if they play like knight c6, you just play long castle with fairly normal development, an idea with queen e3 and g4 and h4, what we checked previously. So after queen d2, bishop f8. There is an attack, typical type of a plan by black, attack against the e4 pawn, and you go with f3. Now they go with c6. Once again, knight c6 brings nothing. There was a game between two GMs, Parimarian or Parimarjan Nagy against Moradiabadi. So after long castles, knight e4, queen d4, and by now you could have seen and you could have learned the plans by white. So just push these pawns like crazy and be happy. So after knight e7, h4, a6, g5, h5, queen goes back to d2. And by the way, here, very important thing, don't be like tempted to take pawn on d6 at any point. No, that's not our point. If you take it, you're gonna open a possibility for black to counterattack you with a rook on the d file. So you play king b1, like we repeated like so many times. If they go b4, of course the knight would come to d5 and to close the bishop on e6. And this guy played knight b6. Nagy went with typical g6 break. So just like you see, you don't have to be Kasparov to play like this. Just push these pawns, and once you have a chance to push g6, do it. So after b4, knight d5 captures, e takes, knight cannot capture because of queen d5 and f7 is hanging. c4, Nagy captured, played h6 to break the king side and played this bishop e3. After c3, he included this move, went with queen f4, played bishop d3. I'm just moving a little bit faster so you can see what happened in the game. By the way, even though our king looks a little bit like weak, it's not gonna be able, black is not gonna be able to take advantage of it. Nagy eventually captured on g6, and after this move, that was threatening rook g5. He just played f4, threatened the rook, stopped the rook g5, and of course his opponent resigned. That's why I believe that if black wants to be kind of challenging in this variation, black has to go with some c6 moves. Once again, c6 wants to go with b5. So here, this is the only variation where you just go with the long castle. And now I have a big pleasure to show you my game played on ICC on 2017 against the anonymous GM. You know, when GMs have like two accounts there and they can use a fake one where they don't have to present themselves, and you just have like their title beside the anonymous nickname. So I know that the guy was GM, but I don't know who was that guy. So let me just show you the game. So after b5, looks like everything what I explained you so far fell down the water here, because this is the variation where they go with the queenside action and pawn store, and we still went for the long castle. Don't be worried about that. I just played king b1, b4, knight a4. I played like bunch of blitz games where they played c5, and after knight b5, they're just about to lose the d6 pawn and we're completely winning. A couple of guys played against me direct queen a5, b3, bishop d7, in which case we go with g4, c5, and knight f5. This is important move. Of course, if they take, you would capture by g-pawn, put your rook on g1, and probably mate your opponent along the g-file. But if they take on a4, that's a problem, because it looks like we're about to lose the pawn. Don't worry about that. If they take, you take on d6, and they're literally falling apart because you'll exchange this bishop, play queen g5, and the g7 will be weakened. And if they go knight c6, you just improve position of your bishop. You defend this pawn, pin this knight, and you just once again have to get ready for bishop d6, followed by, for example, queen g5 with mating knights. After knight a4, very subtle attempt by black to threaten something and to do something in this game is bishop d7. He threatens c5 to attack like both of these knights and go after the knight on a4. We played b3, and my opponent went for g6. When he played g6, I didn't quite like this, because I was pretty much aware of the fact that he was threatening c5 and he didn't allow me to play knight f5. But I said, okay, let's go all in, as poker players used to say. So I played g4, the guy went queen a5, and I said, all in, man, knight f5. So I was threatening pawn on d6, I put my knight into the attack, and when he captured, who wouldn't, all of a sudden I started threatening like very nasty rook g1. The guy played king h8, I captured on d6, and when he played rook bishop to g7, I played the last move of the game and he resigned. I played rook g1. I was threatening rook g7 followed by queen g5. I was threatening bishop b4. I was threatening bishop c4, queen g5, e5, like a whole bunch of threats. This is like complete domination by white, and actually this is why I actually like this seventh move, bishop e2 for white. Once again, this was the last lecture about the Philidor defense. From the next lecture, I'll start coming up with some interesting gambits, and hope you're just enjoying this stuff. That would be all for today. Keep subscribing. Thank you so much for that. And I kindly ask for a little bit more of donations. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.